You have fallen into Event Horizon with John Michael Godier. In today's episode, John is joined by Isaac Arthur. Isaac Arthur is the host of Science and Futurism with Isaac Arthur, a YouTube channel which focuses on exploring the depths of concepts in science and futurism. Since its first episode in 2014, SFIA has considered topics ranging from the seemingly mundane to the extremely exotic, featuring episodes on megastructure engineering, interstellar travel, the future of the Earth, and the Fermi paradox, among others. Regardless of how strange a subject may seem, Isaac always tries to ensure that the discussion is grounded in the known science of today.
Isaac Arthur, we're back. Now, Isaac, what have you been watching sci-fi wise lately? Anything good?
The big ones for this month would be the new Foundation series, the Dune film, and not really sci-fi, but Wheel of Time from Robert Jordan's old series. I would say okay, great, and okay, respectively, for those. So, I absolutely love the new Dune movie. I would say it's the best movie I've seen in at least a decade.
Did you watch? This is the one that got me. I have not seen the new Dune movie. I have to admit that. It's on my list probably this week. But did you watch The Mandalorian?
I saw most of the first season. I remember I stopped somewhere in there, and I decided to take a break from it, give it a little bit more, see how much stuff came out of it. But it was better. I didn't get quite as much into it as some folks did. I love Baby Yoda. I love the character in it. It's great. But at the same time, it helped to make me feel a lot better about horrible things that the new Star Wars films, for the most part. I did not like I guess Force Awakens was okay-ish as a repeat, but the other two after that, yeah. I still haven't seen the Han Solo movie, though. I don't know why. I just haven't got around to it. I liked Rogue One, but I didn't like that one. So Mandalorian helped to fix a lot of that. I was a really big Star Wars EU fan, so they'll get about a lot of characters. I'm glad to see them bringing some like Thrawn back, but to me, it's a little bit like for some of that, one of those examples of the franchise just not treating the fans very well. So, and it seems like they got some new folks in there doing a better job of that now. So.
Well, that was the problem, really.
Yeah.
Now, I have to note, and now he stopped, but if people listen very carefully, they can hear a cricket in my audio, and it's a cricket that's trying to winter over in my studio. So I go through the trouble of building a whole new studio, and everything's all nice, and it gets invaded by crickets. I'm excited, particularly right now, for the Boba Fett spinoff that they're going to do, which is in December, I think, or later this month, rather. So I'm excited for that, and then I definitely want to see the new Dune movie. Everybody's raving about it, and I was
okay. An example of just one of the adaptations that just was really good.
Yeah, and I'm hoping is it faithful to Frank Herbert?
Oh yeah, and the very few minor changes. I'm not gonna give you spoilers in there, but anyway, I see like there's a scene with the Sadako on their home planet. That's not in the book, but it's not like that's an example of somebody taking artistic license rather than subtract from the thing. That's just very amazing scene, it's just very good scene with the Sadako on their home board. But most of the times that's like that too. I remember when they cast Jason Momoa for Duncan Idaho, I was surprised by that. I was thinking he'd be great for Beast or Band, though they cast somebody great for that too. But he actually did really good in the role. I would say the only really weak thing so far that feels like they need more development was you really didn't get to see that much through for Hawat, and they didn't really do too much with Dr. Yui. Other than that, though, magnificent adaptation. Everything just added to it, but they changed it all as opposed to subtracting. So very good director, very good cinematography, very good acting.
Off the wall question. All-time favorite television or film science fiction?
Stargate SG-1. Not the movie. I did like the movie just fine. It was a good flick, but Stargate SG-1 was a very good series, as was that franchise in general. Then Star Trek after that. But, outside the big ones, the only decent one that's come out in the last decade, I think I liked Dark Matter when that came out. Though it seemed like it kind of advanced natural course after 3 seasons. A lot of sci-fi TV shows I've enjoyed, but It doesn't really seem like they're pumping them out in the way they used to, in a way that's good. That or maybe just they don't resonate as much with me these days as when I was younger. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I have that question myself. I'm not sure if it's, although it does seem to be getting better lately. There seems to be a lot more options for watching decent sci-fi than there was, say, a decade ago. So maybe it's just there was a lull, perhaps. Now,
yeah, my standards get a little snobby for too, for all I know. I'm thinking the examples that comes up is Dune reminds me that you can do a good adaptation, but with a lot of the other adaptations that thought I have over and over again, and it comes back to the Boba Fett thing is you got a good setting, bring in new characters. Don't use the old ones that have already existed and adapt them. One of the things that was so upsetting about the old franchise was that they brought the old characters back, and rather than for the fans be like, "Yay, he was my old favorites," they almost were used to just kind of be just thrown away as the introduction for the new characters. It would have been so easy to have done so much of the Star Wars stuff in just a different period or away from where the main characters would have been. And it has a lot of the other adaptations. You got a great book series. Don't actually take the characters from it. Show a different part of the franchise. Show a different part of that universe. And then you can adapt to your heart's content because people just won't mind as much.
well, they sort of tried that, I suppose, with the latest incarnation of Star Trek, where they just jumped into the future 3,000 years, or 1,000 years, whatever it was, so that they didn't have to get mired into the canon too much, which it's a safe bet, but I'm not sure that pleased the fans ultimately.
Yeah. That is always going to be a little bit tricky on that one, and I'm entirely sympathetic to folks trying to repackage these works and update them in ways that kind of need it, but at the same time, the one thing that will people do this with the comic books all the time, and those have so much changed canon in them. I think people tend to be a little bit more relaxed about it. But the key thing with that, when working with the fans, is listen to the old school fans, try to build something they like, but mostly above all else, just don't go back and say we don't care about your opinion because you suck. That's
right.
I think it's a lot of these franchises when they do that. It's like, well, we liked it, and if the old fans didn't like it, that's just too bad for them. New ones did. New ones don't know what good thing you just wrecked. But it is kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't kind of thing sometimes with adaptations. But again, the new Dune movie is a great reminder that it can actually be done.
Yeah, it's. I mean, well, it's a lot easier to do now. With CGI and everything, you can really tackle things that were once thought to be unfilmable.
Yeah, I mean, you could never. Well, the Foundation series, it's thus far the special effects are amazing, especially for a TV show. They all as good as anything you'd have gotten in the knots already. And whereas you look about the old CGI is still definitely showing its age, but I still enjoy old stuff like Blake 7 from the late 70s, early 80s, where it was just tin foil and leather. It was like that's it for costumes and one random bit of prosthetic and we smash on somebody's face to make them look alien. That still has its role if you got good writing. Though to be fair, some of those shows had awful writing too.
Well, it's definitely hit or miss because some of them had fantastic, some didn't.
Yeah.
But I mean, you can't go wrong. Take for example, like the Twilight Zone. I mean, those stories are still very, very good.
Yeah, some of them wouldn't do as well with current audiences, but I think it is. They did bring the Outer Limits back at some point in the '90s, and I remember watching quite a lot as a kid, but it really wasn't that good compared to the original in terms of better effects, more updated plot lines, but not really as good as the original anthologies. And there is an area that I think is actually getting a little bit killed these days just by the length of a lot of new novels. As it's nobody seems to write a fancy novel anymore that's 1,000 pages long and plans to be part of a 10-book series. Where you don't really get those short stories, but there's so many, I mean, Foundation's example of an anthology kind of series in its own way. There are so many anthologies that would be good basis for TV series. Just if that Outer Limits or Twilight Zone flavor, or maybe one season for a longer story type of thing. And I do think that's definitely an area that's now that we have the ability to do 10 episodes released whenever we want on Netflix or something like that, instead of having to have the big fits in the primetime slot. You'd expect things like that to be doing so much better, and yet they don't really seem to be getting developed as much as they could be.
Not yet, but that's sort of still developing, I guess you could say, and hasn't quite matured yet as television. Obviously, very very matured, and then went past that, past its expiration date, perhaps. Yeah. Now, here's an interesting question that I just thought of that I want to get your take on. Is within speculative science, which we both deal heavily in. Are the concepts, or is there any one concept that you can think of that has never been tackled in science fiction that should be?
Oh, that's a hard one. I'm trying to think of. I know there are all sorts of things I always complain are not in science fiction, because of the special effects of the writing limitations. But megastructures, I really would love to see more artificial worlds and megastructures there. I really like to see somebody get the demographics for that right at some point in time. But I would say the nice thing about speculative fiction is that almost as soon as science suggests some idea, almost sooner than it really should be, it tends to get turned into a story by somebody. Very little looking really at. You're like periods of science fiction where it's more focused on the social angles rather than the cool space guns, and we see a lot of that in like the 70s, for instance. A lot of the Dying Earth, kind of genres is out of that kind of thing. That's been neglected at times. Well, other times they focus on more of the science aspects and or more of the the world building, more of the planet exploring. I can't think of a single area that's been completely just left be. Those areas that I just don't think would really translate too well to science fiction. Like my most popular series on my show is that Civilization: The End of Time series, and we look at things like black hole forming, and it's like, well, how would you really show something like that as a story? And the answer is that you wouldn't. You'd write it up as a blurb inside of a bigger story, because it's just not in of itself something that really lends itself to an adaptation to a plot line. It's are you ready for a trillion years of really slow processing? All right. It's not an exciting story. But
yeah,
there's a lot. I guess that would be the biggest thing, is I would love to see the creative minds that can actually turn something like that, or a lot of the other ideas that you and I talk about, into an exciting story. Oh, and that's fine. Make me think of one. I would love to see someone just do a setting inside a Dyson swarm in the distant future, and just kind of give that recognition of the fact that you would have 1 billion planets in a solar system, in terms of these classic sci-fi one city planets inside a Dyson swarm like that people can reach out and go fast and light, and which could have things that were more alien than the aliens we ever see on TV living inside the same solar system. I'd love to see that one actually get used more. But I mean, in terms of plot line, I don't think it makes that much of a difference whether it's set in a galaxy or a Dyson swarm.
It really depends on the writer, because anything can be made interesting if you have the right story line behind it. So you can do things like, okay, is whaling in 18th century New Bedford, Massachusetts all that interesting? Well, yes, if Herman Melville is writing the story, that type of thing. So it just depends on who writes it, and these are also authors we've never even heard of that could tackle these great novels in the future as well as in the past. So
I'd think of half my episodes as being basically writing prompts for people to get around to. So, and I have a little collection of people's books, some of which are more successful than others, that people send me saying, "Hey, thanks for inspiring this." And so I was like, "Hey, can I steal this idea?" I was like, "Oh, good God! I assume I didn't steal it from somebody myself. Take it, run with it."
Yeah, right. Yes, absolutely. I got now to switch gears. I have one final area to go into that I wanted to get your opinion on. And we have been in a sort of strange time where we have government UFO reports and things like that. And we have, Harvard under, a program under Harvard to actually look into UAP and close aliens, things that may be passing through the solar system and all that. Do you think it's a dead end, or do you think maybe there might be something to it?
I think it's probably going to end up being a bit of a dead end on that. I think the mistake is it always starts from that standpoint of assuming the government was actively trying to conceal aliens, and I don't think they really were. So now that they, do people in the government think they're aliens? Yes. Do Air Force pilots think they're aliens? Yes. Do they know of them for sure? No. Humans are humans. There's a lot of us who think they're aliens, a lot of us who don't think they're aliens, and whether or not we think they're visiting or not is very variable on the person. So we're investigating all these weird things that we have no idea what they are, when they might turn out to be really weird, but that what particular flavor of weird we don't know yet. And it's nice to see it just being taken, because the one thing that's always bothered me a lot in the community is you either fall into the crazy camp of alien conspiracists, or you fall into the ultra skeptical camp of you're insane to even think it's a possibility. And I've never liked that. To say it's fine being taken seriously and say, well, it should always have been taken seriously. I don't think there are any aliens within a galaxy or two of us that are smart enough to put together a radio dish, let alone a spaceship. But at the same time, I have never liked the way that we tend to treat everybody as, oh, you got captured by cows and flown to a spaceship and you're insane. And, I like that it's just being put out there now as a thing we're going to look into and carefully and fairly look at, as opposed to just the ultra skeptical versus the true believer camp. That just never struck me as being productive or fair to any of the people involved. It's a serious topic. Treat it that way with proper skepticism, but not with cynicism.
The cynicism was sort of the big problem because there was a taboo, on the subject.
Yeah. And it's people say that to me. They're like, well, if you're in this, you discuss these things. Aren't you worried if you go on that show to talk about aliens that they're not going to take you that seriously? And so I don't care. I don't have that much reputation to protect anyway, but if I was going to, I would, that's wrong.
I don't really care either, which I'll broach the subject because look, I mean, let's be honest, people see strange things in the sky, unexplained things, and it's unexplained, and that I have no doubt, Right. So I thought the stigma was sort of bad form because people do see things, and now as to what they actually are is sort of a problem. But there is actually an option. I mean, if you had a self-replicating probe, a 3D printer sitting in the solar system that's been here for millions of years, printing out atmospheric probes and checking out this particularly interesting exoplanet, well, there you go. There's a plausible way, but likelihoods,
there's you never want to rule things out. It's like, I think I probably qualify as the extreme ultra skeptical end of the rare earth spectrum myself, in terms of I really don't expect to find intelligent life anywhere on our supercluster. At the same time, though, I grew up on this stuff. It's not like I don't want it to be true because it would offend me. I think it would be awesome if it was cool. I just don't see it tilting that way. But do I know for sure it doesn't? No. I would sort of all sorts of plausible reasons, and they say, well, if aliens are out there, would they come and visit Earth? And say, oh, absolutely, if they could. I've always hated that. Well, humans, Earth's a boring place. No one will come here. I said, well, Earth's not that boring a place, and even more, Kansas gets 7 million visitors a year. So
I have been to Kansas.
Space Kansas, yeah, it's
Space Kansas
place actually. But and you got billions of wards. It's not about whether or not they all decide they want to come visit us. It's the same notion there. I don't particularly feel like going to Santa Fe in New Mexico. I hope it's in New Mexico anyway, but lots of people do. So I never liked a lot of the reasons for why people are skeptical beyond just the proof isn't really there.
Well, to spin a scenario though, if indeed you are correct, and intelligence is rare, and my gut feeling is this is the case as well. I think that it's just very rare. But say you had two in the galaxy, which it would be optimistic from your viewpoint.
Yep.
Earth to them would suddenly be the most interesting possible planet in the galaxy because it hosts a civilization different from them.
Yep.
Therefore, it becomes not just something to look into, but it becomes something precious. So I think the people that think that, as you were explaining, and it's also the people that say, well, we're not interested in ants, and we'd be like ants to them, but we're actually very keenly interested in ants. And there are people who spend their entire life studying them.
There are not many of them, but if 1 in a billion people decide to make a study of ants, and I'm sure it's a lot more than 1 in a billion, but it's 1 in a billion. Well, you talk about a Khrushchev 2 civilization, which is not really that big in the grand scheme of things. That means they got billions of people who that's the most important thing in the world, or the solar system for them in that case. And, so yeah, maybe only 1 in a billion people think this new planet halfway across the galaxy is worthy of interest for them. But at the same time, that might be armadas worth of people interested in coming visiting us, and they might think it's very precious. But the key thing is, much like with us, it's not about what the average person wants. If we found that there was some brand new fascinating island in the Pacific, it might be news for a week, right? How did that get missed? But it's not like most people are going to actually go ahead there or change their life around it. At the same time, though, you still have people who did. And I think that's the critical difference there. If there's anybody who's interested in this planet and they're allowed and capable of getting here, they will have. Whether or not they'd be more anthropologically minded or not, I don't know. But one thing people forget from Star Trek is that we don't actually practice anthropology in the way they do in Star Trek. We go in and say hi. That's usually been the standard practice for these things over the centuries. And I don't know that we'd expect it to be any different with aliens.
I'm joined today by Isaac Arthur, host of SFIA on YouTube. Everybody should check that out, though I suspect you all know about it anyway. Now, Isaac, what's in the future, the coming year for your channel?
Well, just coming out tomorrow is going to be our next Fermi Paradox episode, but we're starting off the new year with a look at the of 2022 with a look at the Orion spaceship propulsion technology, and just gotta see if there's any way to really bring that into the new era. The idea of using nuclear bombs to get spaceships from place to place, or even to use them for things like tailforming. The topic's going to be looking at a lot in early January of 2022, and I think there's going to be some fun topics just be looking at and seeing how can we do space colonization coming up as we just unfold into this new era where it's actually got people like William Shatner flying up into space and being able to actually potentially get those hotel flights. What does the future look like for us in space?
So now you're still doing a cadence of weekly, right?
Oh, yes.
So how many years has it been?
We did our 7th anniversary back in September, and it's ironic that the show premiered about the time my birthday was, so usually the birthday and then the anniversary of the show come at the same time. 7 years, we're in our 8th year now. I mean, the first year or two were very on and off production, but it does seem like a long time. I suppose by YouTube standards, it actually is. I'm starting to be one of the old gray-haired ones. I don't too many folks longer in, so...
I'm not too far behind. I think I'm
real close. I'm you, Joe Scott, and Fraser and I all hit the scene about the same time, within a year.
Yeah, that sort of 2015, 2016 era.
It was a good year. There's a lot of shows from that era too that grew up into the void. There's stuff going back a good deal further, to be fair, but I think that's really was one of the growth periods for YouTube in terms of creators.
Yeah, it really all seemed to hit all at once. It just was a different era. It's not like that now.
Yeah.
YouTube's very different now.
Oh yeah, no, it's a different ecosystem. It changes so fast. I was watching a lot of old reruns of TV from the early 2000s and some other stuff from like the 70s, kind of seeing the time skips and the technology and all the things that were so similar but so just different, watching somebody actually answering a rotary phone and then one more watching them get out their old flip phone and like was the highest technology ever.
Now, my last question for you, Isaac, is how did you decide to make a go at YouTube? And I can tell you my story. My story was simple. I was annoyed because there was nobody doing any real content on Tabby Star. It's just a few handful of people that were talking about it immediately being of alien origin, which wasn't necessarily the case. So I was like, well, I'm going to make a video. And
that was actually a great example of how I got to be familiar with your work too. I've been holding off on doing it because I wanted to get more information. And then when I was just getting ready to do one, I saw one of yours on. I said, he was like, well, you got to do something on Tabby Star. I was like, oh, go watch John. He's got that much better covered. I did eventually do an episode on it, but I never revisited the topic afterwards because, there was, as you said, there was just not a lot of good content there. And it was kind of similar for a different thing for me. I had done one or two kind of play arounds with YouTube for something completely unrelated. It was just trying to put together some local election videos for like what levies were on the ballot because I do elections as I guess it's still actually my job, but my second half these days as the chairman of the Board of Elections here in Asheville County. And I was on part of a Sci-Fi group, and I was trying to look for something to try a new video out on, a new production style for PowerPoint and video. And I thought, I'm so tired of talking to authors who never, ever use any of these gigantic, wonderful structures like O'Neill cylinders in their work. It's always this one planet with one city. I'm going to do a video just discussing what all these various meg structures are like. And, with all the nice animations off Orion's home and stuff, and people can see them, and maybe they'll use them a bit more. And I just, from there, kind of rolled into a Fermi Paradox episode, and from there onward. And there never was a moment where it just kind of transitioned for me and from a casual hobby to a show. I just remember at one point saying, I better delete all the old videos on my channel that are going to bore the heck out of people, like, the raccoon in my front yard. And at that point in time, Science of Futurism was officially born.
That's the same thing that happened with me. I did not expect what I got, but I'm glad I got it. And it's been a lot of fun.
Well, I think it's that advice we give so often new folks to say, how do you get to be big on YouTube? And say, I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure if I am or not, but at the same time, I think if you're setting off with the intent of becoming, a star on YouTube versus if you're setting off because you just want to talk about some topic you feel passionate about, I can't say that one is better than the other, but I can say that if you approach it from the angle of I have something I think people find cool, then you just keep working at it, and one day it becomes a profession, possibly. Whereas I think if you set out trying to make a big channel, you maybe it's a little bit different as a approach.
I think so too. I think so. Well, I mean, we obviously were obsessed with our what we talk about, so we had the natural honesty behind it. All right, Isaac, we are out of time. It was good to talking to you again, and we'll do this again sometime soon, and we'll do another collab on the channels or whatever.
Yeah, it's been too long. Well, thank you so much for having me on, John.
Event Horizon and my channel are now available as a podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube memberships. Early ad-free episodes, bonus episodes, and sleep-focused content. Sign up now by clicking the links below to your platform of choice.